When we use chemicals in our labs or in industry, some of those chemicals are very dangerous for their workers. One way that we are documenting how chemicals can be dangerous to us or the environment is to use the WHMIS symbol. Let's see how we can look at some of those chemicals and how some of these are included or can be absorbed in our body, creating issues where it could be toxic. We can have short-term or long-term consequence, sometimes even die. And the whole idea here is how can we protect ourselves knowing how some of these toxins are coming into our body. So first of all, when we think of the WHMIS symbols, so if I go up here, so this is information from the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. So here we have WHMIS. WHMIS stands for Work Hazardous Material Information System. So let's see if we can look at some of these. So when you have chemicals, a few things we have to keep in mind is, first of all, some of those can explode. Many of them can burn with some others with they can oxidize and burn. Some of those gases can be in compressed cylinders. Now, what happens though is that some materials are corrosive, and therefore, if they land on our skin or they go into our respiratory tract, then we can have corrosion, and therefore it could be an issue. The next one here is the skull and crossbones. Some chemicals, if absorbed, can lead someone to die. Not very good. Or you can have other health difficulties. Either you can have a skin irritation, you can have breathing issues. So what happens, it could be your nervous systems, could be your eyes. The whole thing here is you have to be mindful of some chemicals for that. The exclamation mark here is some of those chemicals can be dangerous for the environment, for the atmosphere. This is a new symbols from 2015, how we need to be mindful of the environment. And indeed, this one here is biohazardous infectious materials, and that can affect our body. Let's learn about how they can do that so that we can prevent any or minimize the issues. So the first example I have are basically needles. So needles are used in the medical field to either to take blood sample, for vaccination, or for other ways. And the whole idea here is that we have a needle, and the needle is pointed, and therefore when it goes into our skin, it minimizes the damage to the cells. Now here there's some ways that you can use a syringe, or not a syringe, but a needle to minimize how the skin is damaged. So for example, if you take this here, so here I have a piece of paper, so assume that this is a needle. We have the point here. The best way is you take the point and you go this way. So it will go into the skin, and it will, that's true, puncture the skin, but it will minimize how the skin is broken so that you can do vaccination or do a blood test. The difficulties something that could affect the skin very much is if you go the other way like this and the point is at the top. So here, if you try to go in the skin, what happens, as you can see, here you will damage a lot more the skin, and therefore it's harder for the skin to heal, but also it creates a hole. Some skin will go into the syringe and therefore give access to chemicals to our body. Some of you may be nurses, doctors. If you have a chance, when you go for, let's say, blood test or vaccination, ask questions. You will see there's a whole science on how to do it properly to minimize how things go. And indeed, needles like this can be a way to put chemicals in our body, and we have to be careful. Too much of a chemical is not a good thing, and then we don't want to overdose. And therefore, chemicals can get in our body through the skin, through punctures of the skin. Because keep in mind that if you take our skin like this, oh, you could not even see. Oh, look at this. That's not very good. Let's see if I can show you what we have. There we go. I don't know what happened. So here you could see the needles and how we can maximize the use of them. Because if you take the skin is the biggest organ in our body. So what happened, it protects us, but very closely under the skin, we have blood vessels, capillaries. We also have here the sweat pores, and therefore it goes into the skin. If you damage some of that skin, then there's an access to the blood system. The blood system, there you go, and other parts of our skins where chemicals can join in. You have to be careful. Sometimes you could say, well, other examples of needles. If you take mosquitoes, for example, mosquitoes have a dart that is very specialized to go into the skin. And when it gets into the skin, it injects some a fluid to minimize or prohibit coagulation of blood. It's good for them because when they take the blood in, it allows them to do it more easily. But by doing so, the fluid in our skin reacts and our body wants to deal with that. That's why sometimes there's some allergies for that. And sometimes, depending where you are, if there's an inundation or difficulties and there's malaria, for example, those mosquitoes that have malaria, when they puncture our skin, they can bring the disease to us. And that is not always good. And here's another example on how our skin can be damaged. Look at this. So here we have a kitty. Kitties love to play, but here we have claws. These claws, if you're not mindful, you have to be careful because claws like this can scratch. If you decide to go for a walk in the forest, you can have branches that scratch you, or if you're in the workplace and an accident happen, then the skin can be damaged and therefore you can have chemicals going into your body and you have to be careful. So that's the first way chemicals come into our body. Perfect. Another way that our skin comes to our body is here the digestive system. So when you eat, the food goes into our esophagus, and then here it goes into our stomach. It goes here. There's a mix of all kind of chemicals to digest carbs, protein, and then it gets into our small intestine here, and then it goes into the large intestine. So a few things happen here. If you eat food, then the food goes straight into our digestive system. And here there's a direct contact between chemicals into our body. So if you are eating food, be mindful that some food is grown with chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, hormones for different reasons. So you have to be careful because as the food is coming in, these chemicals in the small intestine will be absorbed by our body and eventually will go into the large intestine here. And here we have absorption of water so that at the end of the day, we have solid waste coming out. So here, this is how the process is going. Now, something interesting, if it happens that you eat something that has, let's see, E. coli, or it's not good food, our body has defensive system. So one example is that if you eat something in your stomach, your body says, well, there's something I'm not quite sure about the food. In order to avoid food poisoning or minimize the food poisoning, then the body will just decide, okay, let's see if we can free our body of that food, those chemicals that are not good. And that's why people will vomit the food they've ingested. And the reason for that, it's easier for the food to come out this way than being able to go in our body and have more time for those chemicals and those microorganisms to affect our body. And that's why if you don't feel very good sometimes or you're sick, as the food, which is like a mix of what you drink and what you eat, mix of water, it goes in the large intestine. If it happens that you feel sick or your body says, well, there's something I don't like, then the body in the large intestine will not absorb the water. And therefore, when you go to the washroom, what happens is that you have diarrhea. The diarrhea is a sign that either you have something in your body and your body wants to flush it as fast as possible, or that you're sick and therefore the body just minimizes what it does. When you have diarrhea, it's a way for your body to say, let's see if we can eliminate whatever is inside me as fast as possible. But when that happens, make sure that you drink water because there's less recycling of the water and that's not good for you. So the digestive system is one way that chemicals can get into our body because then it goes straight into the bloodstream and then blood goes everywhere in your body. You have to be careful because a little bit of toxin may not be too bad. Your body can deal with it, but too much of the same toxin, too much of heavy metals, too much of chemicals can affect the biochemistry of your body, and that's not good at all. Let's look at another one. The other one is the respiratory system. So here, what is interesting with toxin is that we breathe in and out air all day. When you breathe in, you have nitrogen, oxygen, and some carbon dioxide, and then you exhale the same nitrogen, a little bit less oxygen comes out, and a bit more carbon dioxide goes out. So this is the whole idea of cellular respiration. Now here, if you go into the bronchus, there you go, and then you have the bronchial, and then the alveolar duct. I haven't seen that for a little bit, and then the alveoli. The alveoli are covered with capillaries, so that means that you can have exchange of gas. If it's oxygen and that carbon dioxide, it is okay. But if you're in a situation where you breathe in carbon monoxide, then the carbon monoxide goes into your blood system and it's not good at all. But you also have to keep in mind that when we inhale other things too. If we inhale dust, for example, and the dust goes into our lungs, what happens is that the first thing the body wants to do is cough it out. So that's why sometimes when you breathe and your airways just close a little bit, you want to walk away from the pollutant because your body's telling you there's something there. If it happens, and then let's see, there's something else I wanted to show. Oh, there you go. This is a sample of a mineral, and this mineral is chrysotil, and this is asbestos. So here you could see the long fibers. It's wonderful. Long fibers are not too dangerous for us humans because they're long, they have mass, and therefore if they're in the air, it falls down. The little hair in our nose, in here, the trachea. It's some ways to help. However, if you work in a mine with asbestos, sometimes you have microcrystalline fibers. And what happens is those microcrystalline fibers, when they go into your respiratory system, they go here, and because they're little needles, they get stuck in the alveoli. And what happens is that you end up with those needles staying in there, and therefore can bring some cancer. That's an example of you have a foreign body going into your lungs, and then you cannot take care of that. Some people that do smoke for different, or vape, for example, you bring in smoke and chemicals right into your lungs, right here in, and then you have an exchange here of to the blood system. And it's dangerous because the more you do that, the more you can have chemicals in your body. If it's a little bit, it's not the end of the world. If it's too much, then your body cannot react and save itself. Because if, for example, there's a virus coming in, what will happen? Your body will say, okay, well, there's a foreign body in my lungs. Let's see if I can create mucus so that I can push this out of the cells and I will cough it out. So when you cough, often it's a way for you to try to clean your lungs. Sometimes when you have the flu, you're for a week, you cough, and you can see, you can feel the mucus coming up. It's your body wanting to help itself. And indeed, if the viruses are too aggressive, what happens is they stay in the lungs, they reproduce too fast. And what happens is people can end up with pneumonia, or when we had COVID in the last couple of years, some people had difficulties and ended up having to go to the hospital because this was preventing the absorption of oxygen and being able to live. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So these are examples on how chemicals can get into our body as well. So how can they get in our body? First, the respiratory system. The digestive system is one way. We also have through the skin and also through injections or puncture of our skin. So from here, depending on what you do in the lab or for work, it's important sometimes to wear a mask so that you have less particles going into your lungs. It's important in the lab to not taste any chemicals because we don't want the direct access of something in your digestive system and be damageable. In the lab, or doctors, they will wear gloves so that they protect the skin of their hands. Sometimes they can wear clothes to make sure that they minimize or eliminate all possible contact with the skin. And if it happens that you have a puncture or scratch, if it's a scratch, often we put a band-aid. It's a way to protect our skin and inside of our body of foreign chemicals. Be careful of your body because we only have one. May as well take care of it. We want to keep it going as long as possible and be happy. On this, if you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to do a thumbs up and to subscribe to our channel. I always talk about different topics about science, topics from questions from my students in class and also my audience. On this, I would like you to link you to another video about science. You'll see there's always more to learn here. So I'll see you there.